Hello, hello, hello. This is HAT500/Counter-Strike98/HelloWeastWonderboy/Hilo, and in this video we're going to be talking about PNS. We finally got it, boys. I said I'd make a video back when I was talking about Revens, and when Gabriel came out and she had PNS, I was pretty sure we were going to get PNS in Earth, so it's time. It's time for the video. Okay, so in this video we're gonna try and cover a lot of ground. Okay, we're gonna try and cover a lot of ground. I have my trusty dusty notepad right here to try and go down a list and try and keep myself in order. But like I said, you guys know how I do with these talks. I ramble, and I'm rambling right now. I ramble, and you know, I keep thinking of stuff, and there'll probably be addendums. Anyway, so I'm gonna try and keep this as concise as possible. So let's just get into it. First, I gotta clear up some misconceptions about PNS in Earth. First, we need to talk about supplemental. Supplemental damage is ridiculously strong. It is ridiculously powerful because supplemental damage is free damage. It is free damage. So, because of this, yes, you still want to PNS in Earth, just like all the other elements. Right? You still want 2 PNS. You can get by with 1, obviously, if you don't have the second one, but you want 2 optimally. Why? I'm going to be going to the wiki, so flashbang. Why? 1 PNS gives you 50k supplemental, and it is maxed at 100k. So if you go over, if you were to use 3 of these, you cannot get 150k supplemental. It caps at 2. So once you are at 3, this is completely useless, right? This is completely useless, which is the main draw of PNS. This is also really good. The damage cap is really good, and this is good if you can get it. If you can get it, okay? Now, so the things that I just explained here should tell you, okay, we do not need 3 PNS. We do not need 3 PNS. The only possible place that we could need 3 PNS is if, when we get the overcap changes, they let, like, this supplemental cap go up, and, like, this damage cap goes up as well, which, I mean, this one will probably go up, but if supplemental also goes up, then maybe we could use 3 PNS, but I feel like that's probably not going to happen, and we don't really have the space for it anyway. So for right now, 2 PNS is optimal, and yes, you want 2 PNS. Okay? Now, let's talk about some of the grid. So, I have a basic grid here, and I'm going to be going through a couple different grids for different scenarios and all that in this video. This, in my opinion, standardized, if you're using Hunting Galleon Grid at the moment, this is probably the best grid you can get, assuming you are not using a class like Glorybringer. I'm assuming you're using Berserker because it is the best class for hunting at the moment, right? So this is your grid. Now, with this grid, you only have 2 spots to work with in this game. In this grid, you only have 2 spots to work with. Really, you kind of only have 1, and I'll tell you why. 1, we have to keep using 3 Galleon staffs right now, right? Because we do not have a Kaguya fan weapon yet, so we still have to keep using 3 Galleon. So these 3 slots are almost, I mean, they're always taken. They're always taken. Ultima and Opus, these 2 are going to be in your grid pretty much at all times, because if you're they're going to be here. They're going to be here. You may not use these exact keys, but these 2 will probably be here. 2 PNS will almost always be here. 98% of the time you will be using 2 PNS. The only time that I can think that you will not use PNS is if the boss is so strong. The boss is so strong, and you have to stack so much defense and HP that you cannot afford to bring PNS into the grid. That's the only one of the only times that I can think of. But we are in Earth. We have Cain. I don't think it will ever do enough damage to warrant not bringing PNS in this scenario. because if that ever happened, all the other elements would just get completely wiped out, because Cain gives you the free water switch. So almost all the time you will be using PNS. The other time where you may not use PNS is if you are using an Ogi based comp. The reason why is because the way supplemental damage works is it goes on top of every hit you do. So if you are doing a CA specific comp, then you may not be doing nearly as many hits. So PNS may be less important there, and you can use something like whatchamacallit, like Christmas Shalim's weapon, or Golden Knight's weapon, something like that. Beatrix's weapon, Earth Beatrix weapon, her sword. You can use something like that in Ogi comps. Those are the only two times I can think of in the current meta where you would not use 2 PNS in every single grid you are given. Because, like I said, supplemental is incredibly strong. It is ridiculously strong. I feel like people do not understand why we have Belial in every single grid. I feel like everyone has just had Belial in their grid so long that they don't understand the reason why we always have Belial is because of this. Because of this 30k supplemental. That's the reason why you bring Belial to like everything. Because this is just free damage on top of whatever else you do. And then 2 PNS gives you another 100k on top of that. And you're playing the element that uses Hunting, which is a double attack, a double auto attacking element that also gets Echo from the Sieg Dagger plus other sources. And it nukes twice every turn. You want 2 PNS. Okay? You want 2 PNS. So, now to get into dispelling some of the other stuff that has been talked about for not using PNS. 1, PNS is a fist. Okay? We did get kind of screwed in that department. Why? Because fists kind of suck in Earth. And they kind of suck more because of PNS. And I'll show you. PNS has in a way cannibalized its own voltage. Because the only fists that we really use in this LE were like bandages. We used ancient bandages. And we used faceless, which is one of its main draws, by the way, is also supplemental, which it stacks with PNS. So PNS already caps out the supplemental. So if you were to use this, you would only be getting this defense off of that. So it cannibalizes that. You don't use Baihu Claw because PNS is already giving you the cap up. I mean, I guess you could use Lena's weapon, but this is kind of like, most people don't even have this. I only have it because I got lucky during one of those banners where it gives you like the max weapon. So the only other thing left is like an Ultima Fist or PNS itself. And I've already gone over how you don't want 3 PNS. And most of the time you're probably not going to use an Ultima Fist in Earth. But also at the same time, I think people get way too worked up about this voltage stuff. The voltage is good. It's good to have. It's nice to have. But if you can't play into it, do not play into it. It's not worth playing into it. And like I said at the very start, Earth does not have the space. Earth does not have the space. So like I said before, 3 Galleon Staffs always here. Ultima Opus always here. 2 PNS always here. Hunting's always here. That means the general Earth grid only has 2 slots, this Sieg Dagger and this amplification weapon. And like I said before, it's kind of not even 2, because as I've harped on in previous videos, you know that we are pretty much, as long as Hunting works like this with dots and we don't have another weapon that can just give us dot damage, we are tied to this weapon. This weapon and Hunting are joined at the hip. They're joined at the hip. If you can use this weapon, you use this weapon. So the vast majority of places where you're gonna play Earth, you're gonna have that weapon, which means you have 1 weapon left, which is this amplification, and it can be other stuff. And we'll go over extra grids in a bit, but this is just for normal grids. Okay, so that's that. We only have 2 1, maybe 2 slots available in current Earth meta, right? Okay, so let's go back to Notepad, see where I'm at. See where I'm at. Okay, so this right here. We really need our fan weapon to be sword or katana. Why? We need our weapon to be sword or katana because one of the excuse me, one of the strongest options for fronting as a weapon in the current game is Glorybringer. And the thing with Glorybringer is you really want you really want 3 swords or 3 katanas, or a mix of the 2, right? Because you need to get to 3 because it gives you 30% amp on your MC, and your damage will drop drastically if you do not have that. So we really want our resonator weapon, or sorry, not our resonator weapon, our Kaguya fan weapon to be sword or katana, so that we do not get stuck in a spot where it is very hard to use Glorybringer and fit those new weapons. Okay, so I'll show you a Glorybringer grid in a bit. Let me move on to what else I was going to talk about. We're gonna need 3. Okay, so for Kaguya fans, right now with Kaguya fans and with Zeta spears, you can kind of get by with 1 or 2 of them. With Earth, if you're going to use Galleon staff with the Kaguya fan weapon, no matter what it is, we're going to need 3. You're either going to need 3 Galleon staffs in the grid, or you're going to need 3 of the Kaguya fans, because Galleon's weapon requires 3 of the exact same weapon. It's not like Percival where it can be the type of weapon, so like a katana in general. It has to be the exact same weapon. So in the future, when we get that weapon, you will want to aim for 3. If you are very invested in Earth Primal, you will want to aim for 3, because that will allow you to use that weapon and at least 1 Galleon staff in the grid. You may use multiple Galleon staffs, we'll have to see that once we get there. But if you want to use a Galleon staff in the grid with that weapon, you'll either need to use 3 Galleon staffs and 1 plus that weapon, or you'll need to use 3 of that weapon and then 1 plus Galleon staffs. So that is something to keep in mind for when we get that weapon. Okay, let's look back at this. Okay, so next, what we're talking about next is we need to clear up some misconceptions. And this is going to go back. This is going to circle back into our supplemental talk, and I'm going to show you how important supplemental damage is. And like I have said before, you cannot trust the in-game calculator. What I mean by that is this number down here. These numbers down here, they are a general gauge of your damage, but they do not tell the full story. They do not include things like all the buffs you will be having. They do not include what moves you will be using in the fight. They do not include how much defense the enemy that you're fighting will have, and how your grid will interact with that, right? So this is an unreliable narrator. It's okay because you can generally see, obviously, if your damage shows like, if this were like 1 mil less and then I put a weapon in that jumped me 1 mil, yes, the weapon is probably better. And you can probably trust it for that. But use this as a general guide. But like I've said before in previous videos, you have to test this stuff. You cannot just use this as your sole focus. The reason why I bring this up is because I know that there are screenshots going around where people are trying to compare whether or not, I think people are getting, like I said before, people are getting stuck on the voltage. Because you do not have the access to voltage in Earth, people are seeing this lower number and they're comparing it. I have prepared 3 grids that I've seen floating around. There's this grid where there's 1 Alex Dagger, and there's this grid right here where there's 2 Alex Daggers instead. And if you look, the exact same, by the way, all this stuff is the exact same summons. I'm going to be using, and we're going to be testing a lot of stuff. So strap in, boys. we're going to be using the exact same characters, exact same grid, exact same summons, exact same full auto, and we're going to be testing on Womdus Normal, which has the same defense as Nightmare 95, to show you that this, even though this has a higher number down here, and this has a higher number down here than this with 2 PNS, the 2 PNS is still the gold standard because supplemental damage is that powerful. It is incredibly strong, especially for Earth. That's the reason why, that's the whole reason why I've been begging for PNS this whole time, especially since we've gotten hunting, because I already could see how much supplemental damage we could get from something like hunting, doing double strikes every single turn with all the echo and the nukes. I could see it. I could see it a mile away. And hunting is not like Kreisvelger, where it has its own supplemental damage on it. So PNS is extremely valuable for Earth. So what I'm gonna do is, like I said, I'm gonna take these. These are all the exact same. The only difference is these 2 weapons up here. I'm gonna take these 3 into Womdus Normal, and we're gonna see the damage. The reason why I'm using Womdus Normal, because there's higher defense, and as I've said in previous videos as well, and you've seen, the training dummy is also an unreliable narrator, because the training dummy is like a wet paper bag in terms of defense. So you may see more of your gains, you may see a better reflection of that bottom calculated number on a dummy as opposed to an actual fight. So I'm gonna try Womdus. So what we'll do, again, this, I'm gonna start with the double PNS grid, because like I said, this is the gold standard. This is the best one. So we're gonna go in here, and I'm just gonna full auto. The only thing I'm gonna intervene with is I'm just gonna put Galleon's S1 on MC, but I'll do that for all 3 runs. So we're just gonna go through and we're gonna let them play out. You can see the numbers for yourself, and you can see where Womdus HP ends with each grid, because we're just gonna go through it. We're just gonna go through it. So I don't really know what else to say here. So hey, how's it going? How's your rolls? How's your rolls go for New Year's? I hope a lot of you guys got 0, 0, 0. I may talk about that in the future, but right now I'm busy with a lot of Earth stuff and a lot of real life stuff, so don't have as much time. All right, so let's get into the first damage test here. Remember, this is with 2 PNS. $29, 29%. Okay, so 29% is what we just hit here. Let's retreat, and we're gonna go back in, but this time we're gonna go with the we'll go with the second grid. And again, it's gonna be the exact same thing. The second grid here, 1 PNS, 1 Alex Dagger. Okay, same thing, exact same rotation, everything's the exact same. But yeah, so like I was saying, 0, 0, 0. It's pretty good for Earth, by the way. It's pretty cheeking good, because that amplification is something that we're lacking. And being able to give that to everybody in conjunction with the amplification from the new World Harp that we've gotten is also very, very strong. So 0, 0, 0 is nice. I don't know if I would 0-6 it though, I'm gonna be real. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good, and it has its uses. And I have some plans for videos with that as well, besides just talking about it as a summon, if I can get to that. Okay, so here's the second damage test. Remember, we were dealing with 29% before with the double PNS. Okay, second grid, 30%. We're 1% behind right now. We're 1% behind right now. And one thing to note about this grid as well is this grid I've talked about as well in the past. By the way, I talked about a lot of stuff in the past with those Revan videos that is coming up now. But what I've talked about before is that Alex Dagger introduces crit into the grid, which means your damage can potentially go higher if you crit, but you have to crit to get it. So anyway, on to the next one. Okay, So that was Alex Dagger, and a PNS. Next, we will go to this grid right here, which is double Alex Dagger. Okay, again, the exact same thing. Go in, we'll test it. Because, again, you gotta test this stuff. There are some general rule of thumbs that I'm starting to see in, I guess, the main frame of side games with this game. But, yeah. Always test stuff. Do not trust the calculator. Please. Please. I'm begging you, please. Don't trust the calculator. It is not the end all be all. It's not the end all be all. You have to see the stuff in game. Okay, so again, double PNS was 29%. PNS and Alex Dagger is 30%. This is double Alex Dagger. Let's see where this one is. Double Alex Dagger, 32%. We're now 2% below. And what's that 2%? What's that 2% we're missing? What's the difference between this grid and the grid that we just did? PNS. That 50k supplemental is very, very, very strong. It's very strong. So I hope this can kind of clear up the misconception that I've been seeing that you don't want PNS at all just because of the voltage. No, the voltage is the least important thing on that weapon. You want the supplemental damage. Now granted, I will tell you, as you can see, they are pretty close. So if you can only get one PNS, if you're not super invested in Earth, okay, by all means, use an Alex Dagger. That's you know, it's pretty similar damage. But a PNS is the best, even though, again, this is double Alex Dagger's damage at the bottom. This is Alex Dagger and a PNS at the bottom, and this is double PNS at the bottom. Even though PNS shows as the lowest, it is the highest because supplemental damage is incredibly strong. Okay, so that was my test 3 grids. Now, there's another thing I want to test. Now that we've established that PNS, 2 PNS is almost always best in the grid. It's almost always best in the grid. What I want to look at next is what the grid looks like if you don't use an amp weapon and if you don't use a Sieg Dagger. This situation hasn't really come up yet, but I just want to talk about it to kind of get the information out there from what I've seen. So, we want to test with no amp weapon, right? So the question, the best thing that we can put here, instead of this amp is, I believe it should be, let's see, this, okay, Alex Dagger. Alex Dagger is better than the Sieg one. I just want to make sure that you know how we do. No takes around here, no frills. We just look at grids. We can look at grids and we test. So I had to make sure of that before I went any further. Okay, so the best option you have here in this last slot, if you're using no amp weapon, is either an Alex Dagger, or a Caintana. These are the 2 best options that we have currently in the grid. Now, I will say, as you go up in defense, the Alex Dagger may fall off. It may fall off, and you may need more raw from the Caintana. I will say, in a normal grid like this, you probably won't, because there's not really anything in a normal grid that will kind of screw over your damage cap like that. That's kind of more like Super Ultimate Baja, Hexa, Fa, high level stuff that will mess up your grid that much when it comes to damage cap. So what I would say, let's test this as well, right? So like I said here, Ichigo versus Alex Dagger, raw versus cap, okay? My note here is that the Sieg Dagger provides the raw so you can use the cap. I'll test them regardless because you know how we do. Okay, so let's go back to Womdus. And we'll test Caintana with the Sieg Dagger versus Alex Dagger with the Sieg Dagger. Let me make sure I get the right grid. Okay, this is the right one. And again, the original grid I showed you with the amp is probably the best in current Earth, but I'm just showing you what other options you have available in these 2 slots, because like I said at the start, and I've said a couple times so far, we only have 2 slots to work with in Earth right now. We only have 2 slots, so you gotta min-max those 2 slots as much as you can, because that's all we got. Everything else is stuck. Everything else is stagnant. So we have to maximize these 2 slots as much as possible. So let's see this one. This is Caintana and Sieg Dagger. And again, you also, well, not again, for the first time, you almost always use an attack Sieg Dagger now, because you're getting all that cap up from the amplification weapon and the whatchamacallit, and the what's the thing called, from PNS. Yeah, from amplification weapon and PNS, you're getting all that cap up, so you don't really need a you don't really need a Sieg Dagger Awaken special. I would still get one. I would still farm it, because as I've said multiple times, the overcap changes are coming, so we may need it. We may need it in the future, but it is less priority as of right now. Anyway, Caintana and Sieg Dagger, 29%. Okay, so let's go and retreat. Now we'll go to the Alex Dagger. Let's see. Okay, Alex Dagger here. Go back to Wombus. This one may be a bit hard to test, but we'll see. We'll see if it can get to 28. I feel like it will probably get to 28. Okay, same thing. And we move. But yeah, I mean, you know, PNS finally being here is really, really good. It's really, really good. I've said it for like half a year that they were afraid to give us this weapon, and they took a whole year to do it because they're afraid of the power that we can wield with PNS. That supplemental damage on something like Fronting MC is ridiculous. It is very strong. Okay, let's see. This is Sieg Dagger and Alex Dagger. Where will we end up? Like I said, how does he do it? How does he do it? How does he do it? 28%. Because, as I said before, because the Alex Dagger is giving that cap up. Because the Sieg Dagger is already giving us a raw mod here, 2 raw mods, we can utilize the cap up more with this dagger. Then we don't need to, essentially we don't need to stack up on raw damage mods. We can use the cap up because we already have one from the Sieg Dagger. So in that scenario, let's go ahead and flip it. So now let's say we're going to use the amp weapon here. So we're going to go back to the amp harp, and we're going to swap out the Sieg Dagger for the Caintana or the Alex Dagger. I'll start with the Alex Dagger this time. So what is this? The flip side to what we just did. Now, since we don't have that raw mod here and we're using this amplification weapon, the raw mod in this slot should do more than the cap up, because this doesn't have a mod, it is harder to hit this cap if we just have this weapon by itself, right? So we'll test it. Let's go back in. Once again, back to Wombus. You don't know how much AP I've used on this fight. Just going in and out, because for some reason, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense when you start the quest, but when you start the quest, even if you retreat and you don't kill it, you still use up your AP. So Rest in peace to all my healing potions. Okay, so again, this is amplification weapon and Alex Dagger. So essentially, this is 2 cap ups combined. With the cap up, that's another thing too. PNS is already giving you a lot of that cap up. That's the reason why you kind of get this scenario, because PNS is already taking up a lot of that real estate. It's already doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of damage cap. So you only really need 1 extra. Okay, so this is 29. I will say that's probably a low 29 based on how many times Sarasa attacked at 29. But that's 29. Okay, let's go back out and we'll go back to the grid. And this time we'll swap it from the Alex Dagger to the Caintana instead. And as I said, this should be better. This should, again, hit 28. This should hit 28. Let's see. Okay, same thing. Once again, you guys know the drill. We've been here for a minute. I told you it was going to be a long one. I told you it was going to be a long one. But anyway, okay, we're back. We're back. This time, it's Caintana and it's amplification weapon. And as I said before, this one should get lower than the other one because we have that raw damage mod to accompany all the cap up we're getting from the amplification weapon. So we're able to essentially hit into that cap more because we have a mod to hit into it instead of just doubling down on damage cap that we can't hit into. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay, they're both 29. They're both 29. Okay, so these are pretty close. These are pretty close. In this spot, without a Sieg Dagger, is pretty close. It's pretty close. I will say one thing about the Alex Dagger with the cap up, as I said before, as the defense gets higher, it will be harder to hit into that damage cap. It will be harder to hit in that damage cap. The one thing Alex does have on its side, like I said earlier, is that Alex has the ability to, it introduces crit into the grid, which can help your damage, but it is RNG based. So you can potentially get higher damage, but it is RNG based. Okay? So I hope those tests kind of show you where we're at and with these 2 slots. But as I said before, I still think the best option is the amplification weapon, and for most Earth stuff, it's the amplification weapon and a Sieg Dagger. For most general grid Earth stuff, this is probably the best combination right here when it comes to weapons. If you had to take something out, it would probably be the amplification weapon. If you were using, like, let's say all fist dudes or something, you could take this out, or you could swap it. You could also swap it for the Kaintana one as well. But that's actually a pretty good segue into my next thing. I think. Let me check my notes. Okay, so yeah, you're only working with 2 slots. Let's talk. I kind of already did the Exalted talk. Let's talk about the Glorybringer Grid next. Okay, so the thing with the Glorybringer Grid. Let me bring up one. Okay, this one's Glorybringer. So, the thing with Glorybringer right now, with PNS, is we are very, very limited on room. And I would say even more objectively, we only have 1 slot to work with. Why? Like I said before, you have to use, if you're using Glorybringer, you have to use 3 swords, 3 katanas, or a mixture of both. Because you need that 30% amp on your MC. So one of them is obviously going to be hunting. The next one will be your Ultima, whether it's a sword or a katana, which leaves you a third. The best option that you can use, I would say in the vast majority of things, if you're using Glorybringer, it's probably the best option, the best lies option, is a Caintana. So these 3 slots are now mainstays. Okay, we've already talked about how PNS is a mainstay. We've talked about how, you know, obviously the Opus is a mainstay, and the 3 galleons are a mainstay, which leaves this last slot right here. I would say the amplification one is probably the best. It's probably the best here. But you could use something like an Alex Dagger instead of it to get the cap up, because you're already getting the raw mod from the Caintana. So you could use an Alex Dagger here if for some reason you're not using like all Katana. Bit my tongue. If you're not using all Katana allies or something like that, right? If you're not using like Naru or something, or Sandolphin, it may be better to. I would say the general rule of thumb for this is probably 2. If you have 2 units in there that can benefit from that amplification, it's probably worth it. Unless the second unit outside of your MC is just there for whatever reason. It's probably better if you have at least 2 units that can utilize it. Okay? So that's Glorybringer. Let's see what else I got to talk about. Okay, I think I'm actually kind of getting through this faster than I thought. Next, let's talk about extra grids. So I'm going to talk about, first I'm going to talk about Super Ultimate Bahamut. This was my Super Ultimate Bahamut grid up until this point. And I run Mugen's just fodder, Sadala, Galleon, and Kane, right? So all of these can benefit from this amp weapon. So that amp weapon now is like a mainstay, and this is Berserker, so that's a mainstay, right? Fronting is a mainstay. 3 Galleon grids is a mainstay. I would say your Draconic is probably a mainstay if you're using this second key. It's probably a mainstay, and you're not using Sandolphin, it's probably a mainstay. So all of this is a mainstay. All 7 of these slots is a mainstay. Down here, I've talked about before, in grids, in harder content, I would prefer to use the Kame Spear over the Lobelia Axe just because of the utility that it brings with heals. So this, in my opinion, is kind of a mainstay for harder content. Your Ultima, also a mainstay for harder content, right? So these grid slots in here are all mainstays in my opinion. So this right here, if we look at this grid right now, this grid right now is capped on damage cap, right? It's capped on damage cap. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 sources of damage cap in here. So that gets us up to 20, right? So we don't really have to worry about damage cap. The first thing that we can do is, as we've talked about earlier, and this is the reason why I always try and save extra grids later, because extra grids are extra and there's more slots than a normal grid. So as I've said before, you can swap out these Alex Daggers for 2 PNS, right? Swap out these 2 Alex Daggers for 2 PNS. Okay, what else can we do? We're still capped on damage cap. Well, the interesting thing about PNS is not 5% like the Alex Daggers for damage cap. It's 7%. So these 2 together are 14%. One of these is 5%. So if you use these 2 and one of these, you will hit 19%, which in my opinion is good enough for hitting damage cap. Which means this axe can now go. And for me, since there's only a certain amount of weapons that you can use in those extra slots, the next best option for me is it can be either the Draconic or the Harp. One or the other can go into this slot instead of that axe. Right? So we now are working with 2 slots right here. Ooh, once again, 2 slots are open. I would say Caintana is probably useful for the most part. It's probably going to be useful, but these 2 slots are kind of just up for grabs. They're kind of just up for grabs. You don't need damage cap, and okay, let's talk another thing. Going back to the Sieg Dagger, this grid right here is for Super Ultimate Bahamut. So the Sieg Dagger is not needed because he does continuous dot damage to you. So you'll activate Grunting regardless. So you don't need a Sieg Dagger in this grid. If it was Hexa, one of these would be locked down to a Sieg Dagger. One of these would be locked down, which means you only have one slot left. Right? But let's talk about Super Ultimate Bahamut first. You have 2 slots. I would say Caintana is still something you probably want to bring. You probably want to bring Caintana. So you have 1 slot left. You have 1 slot left. What in Earth's arsenal can you bring here? That's not a Sieg Dagger. Well, this is kind of your utility slot. This is your utility belt slot right here. You get 1. Congratulations, boys. You get 1. But this utility slot is also very dumbed down because there's only so much stuff you can bring. You wouldn't bring a Revan weapon, the axe, because you're already getting all this benefit from the Whirlwind Harp. You don't need this, right? So you wouldn't bring that. We already talked about how you wouldn't bring Sieg Dagger. You don't want to bring Alex Dagger because you're already at 19% cap. Well, okay, technically you could bring an Alex Dagger. You could bring an Alex Dagger because an Alex Dagger does get you to damage cap, and it does have all this might, and it does have HP. You could bring an Alex Dagger. An Alex Dagger technically is a fine slot in for here. It is a fine slot in, but obviously realize that you are losing out on 4% of your damage cap. You're only getting 1% of that damage cap. Okay. You could use Piccolo's weapon if you wanted to do some enmity stuff for your triple attacks. Although, no, you can't use this either because you're using Echo Key and they don't stack. So you can't use that either. You can't use bows because you're already getting the supplemental damage from PNS. You also can't use this dagger anymore because you're also getting that from PNS. You can't use this fist anymore because you're getting that from PNS. You could use World Ender if you were using skill damage for some reason. You could use it defensively. You could use it defensively with a weapon like one of these 2. You could use, I think a really good slot in is Leona's axe because this does stack with your Draconics progression. There are 2 different types of progression. I'll actually show you that. Actually, maybe I should have taken it out first. Okay, I'm gonna just throw in this gun, right? So let's see in the weapon boost here. Let me see where it is. I don't know where it is. Where is it? Oh, I think. Oh no, I'm on turn 10. Yeah, I swear it was in here. Where's the progression on this? Actually, let me see something. Yeah, I mean, okay. I'll just show you this because I know Leona's thing will have a mod. I think Draconic is under like some EX Might crap. But I'll show you. I know this Naginata has a specific mod to it. Yes, right here. As you guys saw before, I had that screen up for a long time. This was not here. This EX Attack Prog was not here. I think the Draconic is somewhere in. I think it's EX Might. I think it's EX Might, or maybe it's EX Might Special. It's one of these 2 that Draconic is in, for its progression. But Leona is separate, so they do stack. They are 2 different mods. So I think Leona is a good slot in here. Leona is a good slot in here for your utility belt spot for a hard raid. Another good spot or another good weapon is where is it? Here. AK. Defense AK. All this defense and HP, that's a good slot in. That's a good extra slot in. That's a good extra slot in. That's another nice slot in that you can use. You could use something like this if you have it too. Just any utility weapon is a good one for this last slot right here, right? any utility weapon, whatever you want to bring, is nice for that last slot. And this, again, this is for Super Ultimate Bahamut, so we're not using a Sieg Dagger. Now, let's hop over to a Hexa Grid. Okay, Hexa Grid here. Hexa Grid has generally the same things, but like I said before, in a fight like Hexa, you will actually bring a Sieg Dagger. This will once again be tied to your hip, which means you really only have one slot, which is, again, your utility belt. You can use whatever you want here. I'm a fan of World Ender and Hexa because I like, especially with using Shalim now too, I like the nukes to hit, and I like having our Lumaya's S1 be able to hit 2 mil. I'm a fan of that to help with the 2 mil triggers. But again, whatever you want to use right here. Whatever you want to use right here, that's fine. Now, one thing I will touch on for Hexa is, I said this way back at the start, but one of the times that you may not use PNS is for Ogi related setups. And a very popular setup in Hexa is the Chrysor setup, which Ogis a lot. I am not very experienced in Chrysor. I'll be the first one to admit. I've done Glorybringer and now I'm doing Berserker. But you may take out your PNS in that situation for something like Beatrix's sword. That's why I said it before. For Beatrix's sword, for the Ogi as an offhand. You may use Christmas Shalim's weapon. You may use Golden Knight's weapon in these slots, and some of this stuff may change depending on, because if you use something like that, you may not even use this amp weapon anymore if you're using Chrysor. So that's something to think about for the Chrysor users. I'll try and test that if I can ever get time, but I make no promises. And like I said, I'm very bad at Chrysor in there, so I'm just not a fan of that job in there personally. But that is something to think about for Hexa in particular. So I think that's it. That was a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about for PNS. But yes, let's just do a wrap up. Let's just do a wrap up. The things to consider. Earth definitely wants 2 PNS. It wants 2 PNS. The supplemental damage is too powerful to pass up on. In the vast majority of situations, it is too good to pass up on. You don't want 3 PNS because you're you're overcapping on the supplemental. Maybe in the future, but I doubt it. I want to say I doubt it, just because there's not going to be enough space for 3 PNS. Even if they up it, it still may not be enough space at that point. Once we get the Kaguya fan weapon and then whatever weapons we get down the road, I would say stick to 2 for right now. Maybe if you get a 3rd and you just have an excess of bars, maybe hold on to a bar, maybe hold on to the 3rd one. But I want to say you're probably not going to use it. What else? Earth grids, for the most part, only have 2 slots available to them at any given time. Extra grids, you kind of get a little bit more leeway, but normal grids, let me go back to the normal grid. Where is it? In here. Yeah. Normal grids, you pretty much only have 2 slots, kind of just 1 though, because in any place you're using a normal grid right now, you're probably using a Sieg Dagger. The only other difference from that is, again, the Glorybringer setup, where you are forced into 3 swords or katanas for your amp. Even this, though, to be honest, if you were full autoing with Glorybringer over Berserker for some reason, but you may use a Sieg Dagger here if you were full autoing with Glorybringer, depending on how long the full auto is. Like if you're full autoing like a whole Tef nut, you may use the Sieg Dagger instead. But just use Berserker. Okay, is there anything else I want to talk about? I think I got everything. I think I got everything I want to talk about. Maybe I don't need an addendum. I think I got everything I want to talk about. Again, let's go back to, I'm already in the normal grids. Here. Again, 2 PNS, you want it. You can use, as we've seen from the damage test, you can use a grid like this. you can use a grid like this, but they are not as strong as having 2 PNS. 2 PNS wins out over those other options. So that is what you optimally want. I think that's it though. I'm glad we finally got PNS, because it like I've been saying throughout this video, it's incredibly strong for Earth. It's incredibly strong for Earth. In pretty much every setup you use, it's incredibly strong. So, I mean, I think that's it. I really do. I think that's it. I guess I will see you guys in the next one. I don't know what I'll be talking about next. I got a couple videos planned for Earth related stuff. I have, ironically enough, I have a House of Happiness full auto coming out. Because I know a lot of people need House of Happiness for this weapon or other weapons in general. Because, you know, obviously it's been Christmas, New Year's, people got grants and stuff. Which is Earth related, of course. And I have my friend, Mr. Dote, and I have been working on, we worked on a Sandbox Defender 2-turn full auto instead of it previously was 3-turn. But with Uriel and PNS, we can now hit 2 turns. So I'll try and get those videos out next, but I really want to, I jumped this one ahead because I was going to do this one later, because after I finished like all the other stuff I was working on. But I kept seeing people talk about, what do you use in the grid now? Is 2 PNS worth it? Should you actually use PNS? Is PNS garbage because of the voltage? All the stuff. So I'm like, okay, I gotta get this out. I gotta get this info out. So okay, I hope this cleared up some of the potential confusion that we've had about PNS and Earth. It's good. It's good. If you have 2 right now, you're winning. You're winning, because that's what I've been wanting for a year, is 2 PNS. So you're winning. But yeah, I think that's really all I have. So I will see you guys in the next one, and thank you for watching as always. You guys have been, before we leave, you guys have been out like crazy, bro. What's going on? You guys really like these talking videos, huh? Cheeky, the Primal Fire one, obviously the Uriel rant one, that one got a lot of people, everybody's panties in a bunch, whether you hate them or love them. And this Fosson video I put out too, I mean, it was pretty fast Fosson, don't get me wrong, but you guys have just been crazy with the views and the likes and the comments. I love talking to you guys. I always try and like every comment that pops up. I love interacting with people when it comes to this game, and I'm glad I'm able to do it now through YouTube. So thank you for supporting me, and thank you for watching. Truly, it's fun. It's fun. I have a lot of fun doing this. I hope you can kind of tell. I have a lot of fun doing this. So I'll keep it up. I'll keep it up as long as I have something to talk about. I'll try and talk about it as best I can. So I will see you in the next one, and thank you for watching. Bye bye. I needed the addendum. Okay, I promise this one will be really short. There's just one thing I thought about when I was watching and listening everything back. The one saving grace for a grid like this, if we get a Kaguya fan that's not a sword or katana, is that they have recently announced at Grand Blue Fest that the like stamina grands, these weapons are gonna get awakenings. So this because right now the issue is we may potentially be able to like for example, right, to finish off our cap up in here, because right now this is at what, 14% damage cap, right? So to finish up our damage cap, technically in a normal grid, this would probably be better. Your Alex Dagger would probably be better because it gets you to that 19% damage cap again. But the reason why we can't do this is because, like I said before, you need to use three katanas or swords, or a mix of the three or the two. But if this gets an awakening on it, like how Alex Daggers do, then it may be okay even with the new weapons, because this may fix the issue that we would have had in that scenario. So I still would rather have a Sword and Katana Kaguya fan, but just if when it comes out and it's Sieg Dagger, um, or if it's Bow, um, don't lose complete despair for Glorybringer because there's potential. There is potential. We could still make it work. But okay, I think that's actually it for the addendum. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's something I thought about. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.